When a set only has 86 new cards, and I struggle to make both a top 10 best cards list and a top 6 best new decks list, you know things are going to be rougher than my cat's tongue licking ranch dressing off my feet. But there are a few new cards that you can build decks around. Just don't be surprised if you try them all once, lose, then spend all your time this month drafting Chaos Rising instead of playing Standard. Because holy crap, they're actually adding a new mode to Pokemon TCG Live. Easily the rogue deck I'm most excited for is Delphox. It can draw you up to 7 cards multiple times per turn and does 30 damage times the number of energy attached to all Pokemon in play. I know only a few of you have enough toes for this, but if there's 11 total energy on both sides of the field, Delphox deals 330 damage one-shotting Dragapult. So with all these seemingly green flags, why is it a rogue deck and not simply a good deck? Because there's no one truly strong, unified list. Fire types have some of the best energy acceleration, but not all of them are perfect, meaning you have to pick and choose from the underwhelming options. Emboar is able to accelerate all fire energy from hand with Inferno Fandango, but it's a fellow stage 2, meaning you have to devote at least 5 slots to it. Oricorio EX, meanwhile, is awesome. Except its ability only activates if there's a Mega Evolved Fire type in play, yet we don't have a basic Fire Mega. So you're basically forced to try a stage 1 like Camerupt or Pyroar, who aren't great. Or a stage 2 Megazard, which I already covered in my old decks video. Even though there's no evidence from Japan that this is the best, I'm still confident in the Ethan's Ho-Oh pairing. This guy takes 2 energy from hand, attaching it to itself every single turn. And with multiple Ho-Oh down, you can attack with one out of nowhere, dealing 160 and healing 50 from each of your Pokemon. This can help against someone like Grimmsnarl or Frostlass Starmie. Plus, with Fennekin being a great turn 1 attacker, instantly benching 2 basics, finding Ho-Oh isn't as difficult in a world without Nest Ball. To power up Delphox, you simply use Energy Switch plus a manual attachment with maybe Neo Upper as your A-Spec. I know that likely limits you to just 4 Delphox attacks per game, but that's kind of what'll happen no matter how you build a deck with the foxiest Pokemon. Additionally, End's plan exists if you don't mind wasting a supporter, with Moltres a decent backup attacker who can put some pressure on while you set up. Keeping in mind that the emphasis is placed on Delphox as the attacker, not the card drawer, this is what I expect a Delphox Ho-Oh list to look like. I know I'll get punished for only having 6 draw supporters and we'll have to retune the list, but if you get just 1 Delphox up and running, it should be smooth sailing from there. Of course, if you prefer bacon over turkey, there is the build with Emboar. Slower than Ho-Oh, if you get set up, Emboar can have you ready to go in 1 turn. And with Grandtree as your A-Spec, getting a Delphox could happen as soon as turn 2 thanks to Colress's Thickacity. One card I'm going to try in several of my Delphox lists is Heatmor. While it doesn't bench anybody, it does grab 3 in combination of any fire Pokemon and fire energy from deck. Used properly, it could be everything you need. The Emboar list also adds 1 copy of Ignition Energy. If Emboar's in play, you'll never have to manually attach a single fire energy. Ignition adds plus 90 to Delphox's damage for that turn, potentially helping you get that extra boost. Unfortunately, I did put Tatsugiri in here because I never learned my lesson. Like my ex-wife trying to fit into an old pair of jeans, I've got ideas spilling out of me. The version I saw with Blaziken EX didn't get my feet wet, so I'm going to move on to something so crazy that you probably saw it several times at a pre-release. I'm of course talking about Delibird. While it might seem unorthodox to give your opponent 3 free energy attachments once or twice or thrice in a game, remember that Delphox also counts energy attached to your opponent's Pokemon as well. So you want them to play with your sack and get a present afterwards. I think this is close to what the final list will look like. Rosa helps add 2 energy if you're behind on prizes, while Legacy buys you an extra turn. Thanks to Delphox drawing several cards each turn, Lana's Aid becomes a great supporter late, recovering single prize Pokemon and energy. And what about Mega Audino? Proving just how good of a masturbator I am, this is risky but hilarious when it works. Hopefully you can Kaleido Waltz twice, getting 6 or 7 energy into play. They will knock out Audino after, but guess what? They just activated Special Red Card. Meanwhile, you've got Legacy Energy ready to go, meaning they have to go through 4 Delphox in order to win the game, all with a low hand size while you're drawing up to 7 every turn. I don't think you mess around with that build. Go with 4 Audino, maximizing your chances of starting it. If you do, the other 3 become cannon fodder for Morty and Iris and Ultra Ball because you only ever want 1 on the field. If you've never seen me use Mega Audino before, don't forget that it's a horrible attacker, not even able to KO a Badoo. Another wacky card you can pair with any Delphox build is Handheld Fan. In your pursuit to ensure they have as much energy on the field as possible, this is one of your best options. There's also the Elgium that moves their energy around. And since Delphox doesn't care what type of energy is on the field, you could play Psychic or Prism. Just don't run Turtonator, as that's the opposite strategy of what you want. I looked at all the other potential ways to accelerate energy in a Delphox deck. Cinderace would be perfect, except you can only have one in play due to the nature of its ability. Flareon is just 2 energy at a time, same with Oricorio. In the end, Mega Audino, Delibird, Emboar, and Ho-Oh appear to be the trifecta of energy getter into players. And if you think I'm putting way too much emphasis on having 10 energy on my side of the field, remember that someone like Raging Bolt can get down to 0. Same with Mega Greninja, who will just return Neo Upper to their hand. Yeah, while there are certain matchups like Dragapult where they'll almost always give you plus 60 or plus 90 to Energize Storm, sometimes you have to take care of yourself. No deck fits the term Road more than Avalugg. When I think of a Road deck, I picture Unfair Stamping and a Pact Win into Boss for Game. Also, I picture a deck that only wins about 10% of the time, but when it works, it can topple even the Giants of Standard. Avalugg can do exactly that. Basically a weaker version of Mega Abomasnow that only gives up 1 prize instead of 3, Avalugg discards the top 6 cards of your deck. For each water energy in there, it deals 60 damage. So you can hit their active for as much as 360 or as little as 0, which will cause you to concede in shame. To help thin out your deck ahead of an Iceberg Breaker, there's Petrol. Ideally, you use Transceiver to find Petrol turn 1, then Petrol to find Trolley, filling up your bench. Then on turn 2, it's time for Larry to show off his skills. He's one of just 6 ways to manually find an Avalugg, so he does become kind of important. And if you somehow failed to get one of your 30 energy naturally, he drops one of those as well, in addition to himself. But the only reason this deck has even a modicum of hope in Standard is Kyogre. Ideally, after you've sent 10 or 20 energy into the discard pile, Kyogre's Riptide shuffles them all back into your deck, dealing 20 damage for each. So you have 2 heavy hitters here. Despite all that, as you can see from the list, RNG plays a huge part in whether you'll win. No matter how many Petrol or Larry you use, there's going to be several moments in a duel where you just have to YOLO with Avalugg hoping to hit 5 or 6 energy. While there are 2 Lana's Aid, let's be real, you will always mill them. And the one Surfing Beach is mostly wishful thinking, allowing a Kyogre who survived to switch into an Avalugg. While I have seen Japanese lists run anywhere from 25 to 40 energy, deck building is secondary to luck. When half your cards are energy, the odds of starting a basic plus 6 energy is too damn high. You're also not running special red cards, so their hand is always protected unless you want to go crazy and include a hand trimmer. And gusting is rarely going to happen thanks to Avalugg getting rid of your bosses regularly. Still, if you want to turn off your brain and have fun, my Twitch streams are a great option. You know what? I've been way too tame today. It's time to get naughty. To be honest, Chesnaught's probably better than I gave it credit for previously. Probably because I gave it none. The more I thought about it though, 160 to their active, preventing retreat, and retaliating for 120 on average seems kinda alright. Chesnaught's ability requires both reading and math, so you know it's good. If your opponent's active deals damage to Chesnaught, they take 3 damage counters in return for each grass energy attached to the thing that evolves from everyone's favorite stage 1. You pretty much have to pair this with Meganium to get full value. Get 2 physical grass on Chesnaught, which is doubled to 4, now it can attack for 160 and deal 120 in return. I'm just worried it's not enough. Dragapult shrugs off some of that damage with Monkey Dory, and you don't really have space for Patrat. Forest of Vitality is your only stadium, meaning Battle Cage is out. Thankfully, against somebody like Raging Bolt, they do get KO'd coming into your turn. Unless they have literally any Gust card, then they'll just target your Meganium or Ogerpon. But when have you ever seen a Raging Bolt player run 4 Pokemon Catcher along with 2 Boss's Orders? Regardless, this is how you build Chesnaught Meganium Ogerpon. The lack of Max Rod is concerning, especially when you only have 2/2/2 lines of your stage 2s and prizing exists. But both of the Chesnaught lists you're going to see were adapted from semi-successful Japanese decks. And by semi-successful, I mean one got 4th, the other 12th. And those are the only 2 times Chesnaught did anything. Yeah, once you get past Special Red Card, Mega Greninja, Prism Tower, and I guess Patrat, Chaos Rising falls off harder than Mr. Beast since starting Beast games. The other potential partner for Chesnaught is Yanmega. Again, I think you have to pair it with Meganium because otherwise what's the point? While the Dragonfly does take up more room in your deck than just Ogerpon, you can overload a Chesnaught ensuring it deals a ton of damage. And Yanmega's regularly overperformed for me, dealing 210 as a grass type all without a fire weakness. Like most decks these days, this is dependent on a turn 1 or 2 Lilies plus not being item locked because bug catching set is the butt bone of the list. And while I'm not one to argue against Japanese players I spy on when they don't know I'm looking, AZ's Tranquility and Jumbo Ice Cream seem unnecessary. I think they were going for a strategy revolving around Yanmega surviving a hit, but Hero's Cape should be enough to fill that role. If you really want to take advantage of Chesnaught's special sauce, you could run Survival Brace or Deluxe Bomb. There's no way to manually find them unless you run Petrol, and something like Jamming Tower or a smart opponent ruins your entire existence. But I'm here to sell you a dream, not remind you of our horrible reality where I have to fly all the way to Japan to get the best foot wash of my life. I know I probably should have included this in the best old decks with new cards video, but if I did, then this video would have finished faster than me on my wedding night when we played Mario Kart. Anyway, by now we all know Chaos Rising is buns, and I'm not talking about the buns I put my hot meat between. One of the few exceptions is Metagross. For 4 metal, Metagross's Metallic Hammer does 150 base damage. However, if you discard 3 metal from Metagross, it gets boosted to 300. While the previous pairing was with Slowking, there's no controversy here. You simply play this like a typical Metal Maker Metang deck. Heatran and Regigigas are your early attackers, and you hope PTCGL doesn't screw you over by hiding all the energy on the bottom of your deck. Then if the need arises like Chaos, you can evolve a Metang into Metagross, dealing a fairly easy 300 damage for 4 energy. While you can attach a Brave Bangle to deal 330 in the Dragapult matchup, that's what Regigigas and Gravity Mountain are for. Okay, because this is a metal deck, you know what I'm going to say next. Turn 1, you play Petrol, grab Trolley, then fill up your bench. Genesect EX finds your evolution, so you don't have to worry about Poké Pad or playing with your balls. This is the most baseline Metagross deck you'll find. Judge and Special Red Card work together to keep your opponent's hand size low while you're continually beating them off. And while you will churn through energy, the 2 Energy Recycler should keep you from running out. Personally, I'm not sure if Felipe is necessary here. If I see him in my opening hand, I ain't excited. But if it's late and I whiff an extra energy or 2 on Heatran, I'll do a back Felipe. Steven's Skarmory meanwhile allows you to clean up a missed KO or pick off weak bench sitters like Abra. Now, there is another version of Metang Metagross that appeared in Japan, and I'm not sure I like it. This one added both Team Rocket's Kangaskhan and Articuno. If you've ever seen Kangaskhan in a Mewtwo Spidops deck, it's because of Cornerstone Masked Ogerpon. Except both Reggie and Metagross can deal with it. And Articuno is here for Alakazam, except it can never attack and they'll always win the deck out game. But I can't argue with results. Slightly different versions of this build have numerous first place finishes in Japan. Everything else is pretty much the same though. Turn 1 Petrol for Trolley, then hope to hit some of your 18 energy with Metang next turn. Team Rocket's Factory can help you draw a couple extra cards after playing Petrol, and well, that's about it. Overall, out of all the decks in this video, Metagross has seen by far the most success in Japan, and that's pretty gross. Like when they're eating corn, Dragapult players don't mind going the long way. I bring this up because when I say that Ampharos can deal 120 damage and item lock, preventing rare candy plays in Stage 2 decks, Dragapult is totally fine evolving through Dracloak. Lacking the speed of Badoo and beefiness of Jellicent, Ampharos itself doesn't actually do the item locking. That honor belongs to Flaffy. For a Lightning and a Colorless, Disconnect does 40 damage, preventing them from using items on their next turn. The way you get Ampharos to copy that attack is with Relicanth. Have it in play, now every evolution can use its pre-evolution's attacks, which ironically means you don't run Rare Candy here. Essentially, the strategy is that you use Badoo on back-to-back turns to start the game, never allowing them to play items. Obviously, you can attack with Flaffy to deal slightly more damage than Badoo, but that's a worse idea than when Ash used Thunder on his own Swellow. Then it's time for Ampharos. While Disconnect regularly only deals 40 damage, if you both have the same number of cards in your feed, attacks used by Ampharos deal 80 extra. You're still not doing very much, 3-shotting most relevant threats, which is why this is buried in my Road Decks video. Electric's 100% necessary even as a 2-2 line to help power up your Lighthouse. Then at the end of a game, Zekrom can deal up to 380 damage provided 2 Electric are still on the field. But if you want any chance of success, you have to annoy your opponent regularly. Judge isn't a great supporter for you, but it does give both players 4 cards in hand. Provided you don't play anything after Judge, Ampharos' ability activates. Then there's Special Red Card. Sadly, you will have to be careful and know how to count. They're sent down to 3 cards, meaning you need to play your cards wisely to get down there as well. Ampharos does have an attack itself in Flashing Bolt, which does 140 regularly or 220 if you activate its ability. That is enough to deal with things like Latias and Fezandipiti and Teal Masked Ogerpon. But if you do flash someone, they'll get overexcited and be able to use their items. Which is terrible because you want to ensure their deck is always filled with unplayable items. So when you do red card them, they have a horrible hand afterwards. I could only find 2 Japanese lists featuring Ampharos, and both were from small tournaments. So I used polymerization on both of them to create this. Remember that you have to evolve from a Reap to Flaffy to Ampharos. The whole goal of the deck is item locking, so skipping the bipedal sheep would create too much of a disconnect. Unfortunately, Ampharos is the perfect example of everything wrong with Standard in 2026. For a single prize deck with weak bench sitters like Tynamo and Electric, you basically have to run Shaman, Psyduck, Patrat, and even Battle Cage to prevent them from beating you off too quickly. Except if you do that, where's the room for anything else? Because the entire strategy revolves around them never playing items and always having a low hand size, there's not a lot of room for whacking off. My thought is that you could try to control their energy. Between Crushing Hammer and Handheld Fan, alongside them not being able to play items that might buy you a few precious turns, Neutralization Zone could also be your ace-spec, though remember they're not blocked from playing stadiums. If your brain started aching at the sight of this card, that's because the last deck I'm covering in this video is Claydol. Since losing TMD Evolution to rotation, devolving your opponent's Pokemon has been far too much work, with some crazy YouTuber even devoting several hours to SBI EX. Maybe Archeops gets a slight boost in playability once Fossil Excavation Site is out this July in Pitch Black, but for now we're stuck with Claydol as one of our best options. For a single fighting energy including a Rocky, De-Evolution Ray does 50 damage, devolving their active in the process. While that is weak, keep in mind that 90 is the magic number here for Dracloak. If you can deal 90 damage to a Dragapult with De-Evolution Ray, that's a prize. They do get to reuse that Dragapult again next turn to evolve a Dreepy or Dracloak, but that's a problem for future you. Since you're mostly going to be hitting into EXs with Claydol, give it a Brave Bangle, now De-Evolution Ray does 80 base damage. Drink an Orange Gatorade, now it's 110, meaning almost everything's dealt with. Add in the Lunatone Solrock combo, now you have a good early attacker alongside some card draw. Unfortunately, this is where one of the major issues with this type of deck pops up. If everything's going right, you're only taking one prize card per turn because you're knocking out the single prizer underneath, not the EX or the Mega. It's why the Okidogi Ursaluna deck is doing so well. While it doesn't deal a lot of upfront damage, it's fast and can one or two shot basically everything. Keep that in mind as I design this list to remind myself just how good Baby Frostlass is. Against basic heavy decks, you're kinda screwed. Or you would be if most of them like Latias and Fez and Meowth and Ogerpon and Kangaskhan didn't all have abilities. Frostlass shores up that matchup while also helping against Festival Lead and Alakazam. And by continually sending a Dragapult down to a Dracloak who has an ability, they'll repeatedly take damage if they don't evolve. I'm not saying it's a good strategy because all I really did was make a less consistent Frostlass Munkidori Badoo deck, but there is some spice in Ting Lu. This guy spreads 30 damage to all their Pokemon if there's a stadium in play. If they decide to put Shaman down to protect their bench single prizers, Frostlass chews it up. Yes, it's evil, hopefully allowing you to masterfully bait your opponent into making a mistake. If you're not sadistic like me, there is, of course, a traditional Claydol list with Lunatone Solrock. This is based off the one Japanese list I could find that did anything. Aside from adding one Ting Lu and one Ursaluna, it's effectively the same. I just think you need a way to deal with basic heavy decks, otherwise you'll barely win. Ursaluna specifically allows you to hit them with Solrock for 71st, then take a KO right after. But let's be honest, no matter how you build Claydol, it's basically just a weaker Bronzong in reverse. Even though I was able to fit 6 different decks in this video, the reality is that Chaos Rising won't be doing much to shake up the bottom of Standard. Which isn't really a big deal because just 55 days after Chaos Rising we have Pitch Black. And that set introduces several brand new road decks I'm excited for. Before Chaos Rising launches on Thursday in TCG Live, let me know your road deck thoughts in the comments.